Everybody to tonight's League of Legends match. Tonight we have the University of Washington versus CSU and esports. And tonight we're going to be bringing you a best of 3 match. My name is Aaron. I'm a second year at the University of Washington, but you can call me Kestra. And here at the University of Washington, our esports program is trying to foster connections during this difficult time and trying to create a community and open up career opportunities in the fostering world of esports. And in just a few moments, we will be getting into the draft between these two teams for Game 1. But in the meantime, University of Washington, they've been on a hot streak. Last week, they took down their opponents, Washington State University, 2-0. First game in a pretty commanding fashion, and the second one in a much closer game, but ultimately triumphing in the end. And today we're going to see how they stack up against CSU. Once we get into that draft, looks like the bans have been completed in the moment, but we'll be bringing them to you in the draft view in a moment or so. But regardless, University of Washington bringing out new members for this roster. Drago8 joining the roster just a week ago and put on a pretty commanding performance in both games against Washington State University, bringing out that Skarner and using it to great effect to bring out that backline of the opposing team, thanks to that Turbo Chem Tank. And it's an absolutely fearsome pick in his hands, but something pretty niche. And we're going to want to see this week whether the opposing team's going to want to ban that one out, or if they have some kind of countermeasures against it. But also, University of Washington, with some more flexibility in other parts of their roster. Last week they ran Seiko, and I think they'll be running him this week again. But of course, Mario Cool 4 also on the starting roster options for them, and both of them very capable top laners in their own rights. Each of them with their own niche picks, and I'm excited to see what Seiko's going to decide to bring out, if he's going to see, or if we're going to see something similar to what he did last week. Had a lot of synergy with Drago8 before, and now with this with the same top jungle matchup, we're going to see how their synergy has evolved in this past week or so. And CSU, they're not a team that I'm too used to seeing, but that's all the more potential for them to bring out even more surprising picks. Of course, University of Washington, always with some surprises of their own, as we are going to be headed into the pick ban in just a few moments. So now, I think it's going to be the Kaisa banned out first for University of Washington on the blue side, and it's going to be met by CSU with the Rel. Morona, one of the premier members of the University of Washington roster in last week's game, was able to use that Rel in Game 1 to such powerful potential, getting such beautiful engages. And it looks like CSU knows it, as they're going to ban out the Thresh as well. Both of the two picks from last week being taken away from Morona. They're absolutely respecting the power of the support player for the University of Washington. But in the meantime, it looks like University of Washington just going to ban out some power picks in the form of the Samira and the Udyr. Samira sustaining some serious nerfs in the coming patch has been an absolute standout, especially in terms of ban rate, and Udyr cannot be underestimated with how fast his early game is and how annoying he becomes with his tankiness and movement speed in the mid and late game. And speaking of tankiness and move speed, Skarner finally going to be banned out against Drago8 for CSU. You have to respect the power of this pick. He is always able to find those key members of the opposing team, no matter how far in the backline they are, with that Scorpion Sting. It looks like for the first pick for the University of Washington, it is going to be the Seraphine. Very interesting. I really like seeing Seraphine as a blue side first pick because of how much flex potential this pick carries. Can be played in the solo lanes if you're competent with it, as well as in either bot lane or support, and that leaves so many options for counter pick potential for the University of Washington. Keeps the opposing team on their toes. But instead, for CSU, it is going to be the Lucian and the Hecarim picked up as the first two picks of the red side. Again, two just straight up powerful picks. Lucian, one of the most commanding mid laners or top or bot laners if you so please, but able to secure himself in the mid lane very handily with very little losing matchups. And Hecarim, with the fast early farm and some scaling options, is going to provide red team with some flexibility going into this draft, as now the Gangplank is going to be picked up for University of Washington. This is a pretty interesting one, but Gangplank, not such an unorthodox pick, and quite a few options between some of the tankier builds, as well as going full crit with things like the Immortal Shield Bow and the Infinity Edge. The Zaya is going to round out the first phase of the draft for the University of Washington, and it's a pretty interesting blind pick for the AD carry position, but I imagine University of Washington wanting to try things out here in the bot lane, as now CSU going to finish off their first phase with the Camille, going to try to win out in that top lane matchup against the Gangplank. Has scaling options, especially in that split push, and hopefully is going to be able to match the Gangplank up in this late game. But really, the commanding role of this Camille is going to be to shut him down before he can scale and become an absolute monster with those barrels. And now in the second portion of this ban phase, it is going to be the Nautilus taken away from CSU, as then the Orianna going to be taken away from University of Washington. As Galio goes out for University of Washington, now 2 support picks looks like going to be taken away from their opponents, and 2 mid lane picks going to be taken away from Vomus Mori. Both of them played to great effect in last week's game, and looks like CSU have been doing their homework, as they're going to make sure that he can't make such big plays on either of them, whether it comes to that Shockwave or to that Destiny Gate. So now for the rest of this draft, it is going to be CSU. Looks like it's going to be them picking their mid laner for the first part of this red phase draft. No, it's going to be the support actually. Nami going to be picked up by CSU North. This is a pretty interesting pick in itself. It's not the most popular support. Enchanters, whether they've got, if they don't have such explosive power as something like the Seraphine, they usually fall out of favor. But Nami going to be picked up for CSU North, and she's definitely able to use either the Imperial Mandate or the Moonstone Renewer. But it looks like in return, University of Washington going to pick up the Syndra. Vomus Mori with such a powerful pool of those meta mid lane picks, and Syndra going to be joining the battle to win out in that mid lane, no matter what the matchup is. And now as they wait on their last pick, University of Washington going to be going with the Dr. Mundo for Seiko. This is something that we saw Mario Cool 4 play in one of University of Washington's previous games. But actually it is going to be going in the jungle, as the Gangplank has already been picked. Drago 8 going to be playing that Dr. Mundo, but it's a very similar role, I think, to the Skarner. He's going to be this tanky, high movement speed, high tenacity monster that's going to be running straight at the backline of CSU North. And speaking of the backline, it's going to be the Victor to round out this draft for the red team. Just a safe wave clearing mage that is going to try to avoid any solo kill potential from the Syndra. And for the most part, it looks like University of Washington, they've got they've got a pretty solid backline core going on between the Seraphine and the Zaya and the Syndra as well, to create space for them. Not to mention the Gangplank continuing to put out those barrels that are only going to get more deadly as the game progresses. But as far as the front line goes, it's going to be largely limited to Drago 8 on this Dr. Mundo. And it's going to create a pretty interesting dynamic, because when we've seen him play his Skarner, it's always going to be carving his way straight through the opposing team's lines and trying to find that suppression. But Dr. Mundo, instead, even though he's going to be finding himself in a similar role, with this composition that the University of Washington has going on, he's going to be largely leaving his team to dry as far as frontline goes, and that's going to leave University of Washington have to fend for themselves with their kiting tools. And kiting tools they have aplenty, as Seraphine able to provide not only crowd control and movement speed, but Gangplank with some movement speed of his own in the form of those barrels, and Zaya as well able to peel for herself with their ultimate. Not to mention the Scout of the Week in the form of the Syndra, and that's going to mean that University of Washington, this backline core that we've talked about, is going to be playing these fights pretty scrappy, as Drago on this Dr. Mundo is going to try to find out the backline of CSU North, the likes of this Victor, this Nami, and even the Lucian is able to find him. But on the other hand, on CSU North side, they have a lot of tools to dive this backline of the University of Washington between the Hecarim and the Camille. Onslaught of Shadows and that Hex Tech Ultimatum able to find their way straight into those key members of University of Washington's composition. And I'm hoping they've got their target priority all on board, because they're really going to need to find the Seraphine, especially if she goes for that Moonstone Renewer build, which is so potent with how many heals she's able to pump out and how many opponents she's able to target. She's able to stack that heal so quickly, and it's going to be on CSU North to try to shut down that bot lane of the University of Washington. And speaking of the Seraphine, we've got a pretty interesting rune setup, it looks like. I'm not sure if this is a visual bug or not, but it looks like Morona is going to be rocking the Lethal Tempo with Domination Secondary on the Seraphine. And once again, I'm not entirely sure if this is a bug, and for University of Washington's sake, I hope it isn't, but regardless, we are going to be headed into the game now, as we've got, like we've talked about, Gangplank versus Camille in the top lane, Dr. Mundo versus Hecarim in the jungle, Syndra versus Victor in the mid lane, and Lucian and Nami versus Xayah and Seraphine in the bot lane. And I think one of the main avenues to watch out for is going to be the top lane. Camille and Hecarim really going to be looking to shut down this Gangplank, I expect. Try to keep that scaling threat of the University of Washington at bay, but there are scaling threats aplenty on the side of University of Washington. Mundo, one of the hardest scaling tanks in his own right, and can definitely get out of control if you let him farm to his heart's content. And not to mention the Seraphine as well, if she's able to get off the ground and pick up a lot of those supportive items, going to be pumping out so many heals in these team fights and making it so difficult for CSU North to try to get anything done in the mid game. But it looks like for this level 1, it's going to be pretty quiet. Both teams just going to be watching all the entrances to their own territory, making sure that anything fishy isn't going on. No invades of any sort. Is Seiko going to move forward to this Pixel Brush here in the topside river? Maybe Drago8 and Seiko going to be using their level 1 power to try to muscle their way into the topside jungle, or watch out for Mame Jin to try to find a cheeky ward into that Pixel Brushes. Now they're on the move. They've got the movement speed from the Flames, and now Drago8 has the Cleaver as well to get the flow onto the opposing Hecarim. He's forced to use his Ghost to try to get away from this one, but the effective Cleavers are 3 for 3 so far, and that's going to be the first blood picked up by Seiko. Drago8 not even needing to use that last Cleaver, and now Carlapu in big trouble here as he tried to help out his jungler, was only going to find himself locked up and picked up by that infected Cleaver. University of Washington starting off this early game with a roaring start of 2 kills to 0. Not even before the jungle creeps have spawned, is now Drago8 and Seiko using that priority to muscle away this red buff as well, and Cherophobia and Mame Jin just forced to watch in horror as that red buff gets taken away from them, as Seiko, after handing off that leash, is going to make sure that Drago8 gets himself an advantage in this topside jungle. Now things are up to Mame Jin whether he wants to make his way over to the outside of the Dr. Mundo, or if he just wants to make it, or just wants to continue over to his own clear. But looks like Drago8, keen to the invade potential, is going to immediately path to his own red buff, on the lookout for whether the Hecarim is going to go for that invade to try to even out the buffs. And even though Hecarim has the level 3 off this wolf camp, if he decides to go for this invade, not only is he going to be spotted out, but he is going to run straight into Dr. Mundo, and who might have a potentially more devastating level 3, but with how quickly he can put out those infected cleavers. As the second red buff going to be picked up by the Dr. Mundo, as Mame Jin looks like he was on one step ahead as well, and is going to head straight to his Raptors and just going to accept that his red buff is going to be taken away this game. And look at that trade from Seiko there. A beautiful barrel going to take Cherophobia down to half HP, as some big trades going down here in the bot lane. All lanes of University of Washington shoving straight into their opponents, using that big priority they found in that early jungle fight, knowing they have an XP advantage and will have a gold advantage when they back as well, and just going to send CSU North straight into their turrets and make it that much harder for them to CS. But now Carlapu is on the advance, able to shove out with that death ray, but that might put him in a little bit of trouble, as Drago8 is covering the mid lane. Once again, a big trade happening down there in the bot lane, and usually it's quite difficult to trade into the likes of Nami Lucian with how much power she has with, or Nami has with that Tide Caller's Blessing, and how many auto attacks the Lucian is able to put out, meaning he's able to use that enchantment so quickly, put out such big burst damage. But Seraphine is such a powerful support, even if she's got the lethal tempo, and bot lane of CSU North forced to respect it, as they do find themselves about 7 or 8 CS down. in this bot lane matchup, as Drago 8 going to continue on his way down to that free buff against the Hecarim. Really shutting down his opponent here in the jungle thanks to a heads-up play at level 1. And for the most part, because Dr. Mundo had to find himself not only the red buff of his opponent, but his own jungle as well, he's not going to be looking for any early ganks yet so far, but Mame Jin, on the other hand, forced it back early and accept that he's going to find himself in a little bit of an XP advantage. Fortunately, is able to even out the CS lead. Some intelligent pathing from him is going to mean that he's at 24 CS at the same time that the Dr. Mundo is, even if he didn't find himself a buff. And because of that, he's able to get himself the Sheen on the first back and really enhance his clear speed and try to get back onto pace with the Dr. Mundo, who's going to be finding himself the topside scuttle as well. The CS might be even in the jungle department so far, but you have to keep in mind that Drago 8 has plenty of camps yet still to take, but those of the Hecarim are going to be spawning as well, but it looks like he's going to have to leave those to the wayside for the moment. Aegon Rector Hecarim trying to find the gank down there with the Ghost, but not going to find anything quite just yet. Did, of course, get the flash of the AD carry, and that's going to mean something, maybe in just a couple moments, but at least down the line as the ward's going to be cleared out by the Hecarim thanks to that sweeping trinket. Catching Drago 8 on the back timer, knowing that he can't counter gank, at least finding the flash there, but creating some opportunities for Seiko here in the top lane to find some trades. And now he's got a slow push going on, but the Grasp of the Undying, or not the Grasp of the Undying, excuse me, the empowered auto attack from Cherophobia, meaning that those trades aren't going to go so lightly, especially now that the Camille has the Sheen available and still has teleport to her name. Both top laners do as well, and that's going to mean something if the junglers decide to turn their eyes to the bot lane, especially if either team sets up something like a flank ward. But for the moment, it looks like CSU North, having shoved in the opposing bot lane, are going to find themselves the opportunity to start up the dragon. It looks like University of Washington not too keen on stopping it. CSU North, with some vision in the opposing bot side jungle, is going to be spotting any attempts to steal away this dragon, and well played from CSU North using that gank opportunity. Even if it didn't net a kill, it did net CSU North a lot of space to continue to push down that bot lane, knowing that the Hecarim was there and ready with the gank, and that's going to mean a Cloud Dragon for themselves and some reduced cooldowns on their ultimate abilities if the trades continue to come out in the bot lane. But Seiko is winning out pretty dangerously up there as he's continuing to shove that parley straight into Cherophobia's face, but no kills happening quite just yet as Seiko going to hold his trigger on the cannon barrage. It looks like I spoke too soon as he has the level 6 advantage over his opponent. He's going to send it out, trying to find out Cherophobia where he stands on that recall, but not going to find the kill quite just yet. And where Camille was trying to shut down the gangplank in this top lane matchup, it looks like things have completely turned around as now he is 20 CS below his opponent. 22, in fact, against the likes of the gangplank. And while he's a pretty dangerous character in the lane, thanks to how often he can just put out those parleys, you'd imagine the likes of the Camille able to match him, but Seiko playing so well in the top lane, always finding appropriate spacing with those parleys. That's what we're talking about. Not leaving any opportunities for Cherophobia to try to find those empowered auto attacks as he continues to use that parley off cooldown. He's not using it to try to find the enhanced gold onto those minions. He's trying to force the Camille out of lane and secure these Krug camp for Drago 8 as Cherophobia, not knowing what the Mundo is up to, has to use that hook shot to escape and is going to continue to get zoned off these minions. Needs immediate jungle attention if he doesn't want to keep falling further behind in this lane as this wave is about to crash. And Cherophobia, having just got off the base, is going to have to get back to the fountain once again. Topside of University of Washington were performing so well last week against Washington State University, and they were continuing to show their absolute dominance against CSU North as Drago 8 snowballing that level 1 advantage into a 20 CS lead over his opponent in this early game on Dr. Mundo. And now he's popped that sadism and he's going to head straight onto Carlypoo. Manages to dodge out the stun from the gravity field as Carlypoo forced to flash away from that scout of the week, but it looks like he is not flashing away from that last infected cleaver from Drago 8. Practically a solo kill with a little bit of moral assistance from Vivamus Mori, and looks like Morona going to keep the wave at bay to allow Aegon Rector some more opportunity to farm that wave safely and set themselves up in an advantageous position for this back. But Drago 8 continuing to show beautifully in all these games, and now finds himself 2-0 against his opponent and setting up not only the top side for success, but the rest of the game as well, as he's going to continue to be scaling into this late game. on this Dr. Mundo pick alongside the Gangplank as well. And in the meantime, Mame Jin has just not found any opportunities to try to win anything back on other sides of the map in the face of Drago 8, and he's going to try to look for the Rift Herald now, and has himself a bit of a window knowing that the is in the bot side doing his red buff, and he's rotated the bot lane up as well to try to secure this Rift Herald for themselves, but Vamas Moria is here, and importantly, Drago is as well, and he might not have the sadism, but he still is very powerful, and now the Scatter of the Week is going to land onto the Hecarim, and the Unleashed Power are going to practically only need one, as the Sindri going to pick up the kill onto the opposing Hecarim, and CSU North looking very desperate to try to force something with the 9-minute Rift Herald with no opportunity, or with no priority anywhere on the rest of the map. They did rotate their bot lane over to the mid, but that only gave away their intentions, and they're going to cost themselves dearly, as the Hecarim is going to go down on the flash force shot from the Camille as well. Scout of the Week going to land onto the Lucian in the mid lane. Meanwhile, Zaya has so much free time to farm all by herself in the bot lane. Every single member of the University of Washington is winning big in this early game, as just 9 minutes into this game, the University of Washington have netted themselves a 4.7 gold lead. Practically a 5k gold lead before the 10-minute mark has even happened. And Seiko, beating down the last plating of the top lane turret, is going to not only win out in this early game on this gameplay, but going to continue to win out in this late game with how powerful this pick is. And it looks like he's going to be opting for the Trinity Force this game. Like we talked about, Gangplank with so many options for itemization, and this is just one of them, as he's going to go for that early Sheen proc. It looks like with this pick, he's going to want to win out in the early game even harder, but now Mame Jin going to look to shut him down with this onslaught of shadows, and the Orange is not going to be able to cleanse away the fear. Seiko just going to wait for his death, tries to stall it out for a little bit longer with that remove Scurvy, but Mame Jin finally able to pick up a CSU North. Going to redeem himself with that first kill for his team, but it's going to mean that Aegon Rector and Marona down here in the bot lane are going to continue to beat down on the bot lane turret of their opponents, and the Lucian and the Nami not able to do so much against it, as Marona with that lethal tempo proc doesn't have anything like a Guardian or an area, but maybe this lethal tempo just makes himself a little bit more deadly, as now Nami going to send out that tidal wave and try to finish off this wave there. Is now the charm going to find its way onto the Lucian and Skylar Week as well. Vamas Moria picking up that kill onto the opposing AD carry, and Nami forced to watch it more as her AD carry goes down. Is now finally Mame Jin making his way down into the bot lane, and Victor here as well, but they might have been just a little bit too late, as that charm from Seraphine just barely clipped Isolim on that Lucian. Now the Scatter of the Week going to find the mid laner as well. The good is going to land an egg under his own turret. University of Washington cannot be stopped in this game after such a commanding early game lead, and in the meantime, Drago 8 not even going to need to participate in that play, as he's going to solo away the dragon. Now going to find Mame Jin on this romp here. Doesn't hit the infected cleaver, but Vamas Moria finds the Scout of the Week, and now the slow going to land as well, and another kill picked up in the territory of CSU North. They can't even find their way into their own blue side jungle. 7-1 in this game, a familiar scoreline. And every single member of the University of Washington continuing completely snowball their lead. And look at Seiko, he's running straight into the turret of his opponent to land those parleys off cooldown, letting Cherophobia know that this is not his lane. And now Aegon Rector looking for the solo kill onto the Lucian here. Has the heal, but he's going to flash in to try to secure that last auto attack onto the Lucian. But now he's going to find himself in a 1v1 against Alhu. But the Ignite is ticking down. He has the minions, but he has the root, and Alhu too going to go down, trying to 1v1 to try to keep AD carry alive, but he's going to be the sacrificial lamb instead. Practically a 1v2 double kill for Aegon Rector. Drago 8 going to continue to look for things in the mid lane. Finally, Mame Jin finding the shutdown onto the AD carry of the University of Washington, and now the flash going to come down. Marona going to barely miss out on that root. Props to the lethal tempo, but it's not going to mean so much for something like a Seraphine, as fortunately Carlafu able to walk away with his life. But you can see University of Washington at just 12 minutes into this game are working with every inch of space available on this map, no matter where it is. Any jungle camp that they want, they're going to take it. They're going to take Cherophobia's life. It looks like the Hextech Ultimatum going to go down to dodge out that infected cleaver. Drago going down a little bit low. He doesn't have that sadism available to him, but it looks like CSU North not even going to try to find a fight in their own jungle. It's all they can do just to try to zone them off for just a moment. Try to find themselves an opportunity, even for just a second, to try to wrestle away some of their own vision. Make sure that they don't keep dying in their own jungle, and it's going to mean so much if they do, because University of Washington, they are doing an absolutely beautiful job, a masterclass here of how to snowball a lead that began at just 1 minute and 20 seconds into this game. and is now ballooned into an 8,000 gold lead at just 13 minutes. And University of Washington, they're wrestling away camps, they're wrestling away kills and picks, and they're even finding turrets. And now the bot lane of University of Washington bearing down onto the mid lane turret, as well as the plating's finally going to go away in just 10 seconds. Stem the gold bleeding for CSU North, even if just for a moment, but they're going to need so much more if they want to get back into this game, and have some tools for it. They have the Hextech Ultimatum, and it can be followed up by that Onslaught of Shadows, things like the Bubble from Nami as well, if they want to find a pick, and maybe that's what they need. University of Washington stepping a bit too far forward into the territory of CSU North, but maybe a bit too far forward. Does not such a thing exist? Is now Mundo going to get stunned up by that gravity field, but that is not going to stop him from going where he pleases. The Onslaught of Shadows forced to use defensively to get away from that Scatter the Weak, and Drago 8 with so much impunity just to walk straight through the blue side jungle of his opponent to try to find a pick down there in the bot lane, and even if it doesn't amount to anything, it's going to buy space not only for Seiko to bear down onto a trade on the Camille in the top lane, but for Eigenrector and Morona to continue to beat down that mid lane turret. And once that one drops, if there was any space for CSU North to play with on this map left, it is going to be evaporated, as University of Washington taking away their opponent's camps off cooldown. Mame Jin practically stunted in gold, 68 CS to the 113 of Drago 8, and it's only going to get worse as he finally finds himself a wolf camp, but at the cost of his Kruk camp in the top lane. You can see in the, speaking of top lane, this Rated Dirt going to come out for Seiko. I imagine that's going to turn into something like the Collector, and it's only cluing us in yet more to how Seiko does not want to be that scaling threat on the gangplank. He wants to finish this game out in just 20 minutes, I can imagine. He's going to use that early game power of the lethality to do so, as that top lane turret continues to go down, and Alhu 2 and Mame Jin have to play so cautiously as they venture into their own topside jungle. And the only reason they're able to take away that ward is because Drago 8 on this Dr. Mundo is on his way to that second Rift Herald at just 15 minutes into this game. Ordinarily, it's an objective I advise teams against taking, especially if it means diverting resources towards, but University of Washington are just so far ahead that if they're able to find themselves a big team fight, that Rift Herald is not going to find just an inhibitor. It might even go all the way, and that's the one opportunity, I think, for the Rift Herald to be useful at past 15 minutes. And look at that, Seiko absolutely blasting Cherophobia with that parley. He is not getting so much as an inch in this top lane, and now the top lane turret going to go down as well. Just an inhibitor turret remains in the north side of this map, and every single member of CSU North absolutely stunted when it comes to gold growth. Only Mame Jin and Isolem have found themselves with mythic items at 16 minutes into this game, as Cherophobia can hardly scrape together that Trinity Force. Karlapu as well can barely get what looks like the Luden's Echo, as now Seiko going to get leaped on by the Hextech Ultimatum, but who's locked in here with me? It might be you, as now finally CSU North able to find themselves a pick onto Seiko and straight a bit too far into that top side, where the rest of his team was positioning for that bot side dragon, as now the caster is going to take a water break real quick. Clear up the throat in this solo cast, and try to anticipate how CSU North is going to find their way back into this game, as they have 3 members positioned for the defense of this mid lane turret, as Drago 8 and Vivamus Mori have the Rift Herald going down in the bot lane, diverting so many resources of CSU North. It spread so far and few between as the Rift Herald finds the crash onto the inhibitor turret, but that's finally going to be all that it can get. And for CSU North, maybe that wasn't exactly what they were looking for, I can imagine. It sounds counterintuitive, but in some situations it might have been better for them to lose that inhibitor, potentially, to make sure that the super minions crash into their own base and maybe set up a safer position for CSU North to farm and get some gold and XP in their pockets. But of course there are detriments to that play, as it does mean University of Washington has even more space to start up a 20-minute Baron Nash, which I can imagine is going to be happening. Is Isolem going to go on to Eigenrector and has the Rector. Unfortunately, he's able to walk away from that without having to use either his ult or his flash, but Isolem with that Kraken Slayer, he's nothing to sniff at, especially when he's buffed up by that Tidecaller's Blessing, and that's one indication that CSU North do have some tools to work with, but it's all a matter of getting them together and trying to find a big pick onto a key member of the University of Washington. There are still 2 key bounties on the side of the blue team. Drago 8 with 300 to his name, and Vivamus Mori with 450 is now, here they go, looking for the pick onto Sika once again, who's straying a bit too far forward into that inhibitor. Big powered auto attack coming down onto Kerophobia, as now Drago 8 trying to save the top lane, is going to get stunned up by that bubble. The tidal wave going to go out as well to find Marona, and Drago 8 forced to flash away and leave his support to dry. There it is. CSU finding at least 2 kills. Vivamus Mori in the backline is going to pick up a kill onto the support as well, but at the cost of his own shutdown. A bit too late to the party there and in the wrong position as well, and that's going to be a big advantageous trade for CSU North. 3 for 1, and importantly finding one of those key shutdowns in the form of Vivamus Mori on that Syndra. That's going to be a lot of gold going to their pockets, and a lot more by the way of completing those key items. As now the Blighted Jewel going to go into the pocket of Karlapu with that Luden's Echo. It's a lot of magic pen between the Luden's Echo and the Sorcerer's Shoes and that Blighting Jewel, and maybe that's going to mean that he has what it takes to blow up those key squishy members of University of Washington, like Seiko, like Vivamus Mori, and like Aiken Rector, if he can find them. But there was one shutdown that CSU was not able to pick up, and it was that Dr. Mundo, and it's only going to get even more difficult as the Spirit Visage is going to complete it along that Sunfire Aegis at just 20 minutes into this game. This is an ungodly tanky Mundo, and it's going to be a Herculean feat for CSU North to try to take this man down, and he knows it. He's going to position himself straight for this 20-minute Baron Nashor right off spawn. Knows that even after that mishap in the top lane, there is practically nothing CSU North can do to stop this from happening, and it looks like CSU North may be tipped off to what's going on. The things are coming down around the Baron Nashor, but they don't have any vision on it. Looks like the mid laner down there in the bot lane as well is going to mean that CSU North not able to contest this one. Drago 8 with the call onto the 20-minute Baron off spawn is going to pick it up handily in just 30 seconds. And it looks like even though CSU North finally figure out what's going on, as they don't see any members of the University of Washington on the rest of the map, they are powerless to stop it. And that's going to be another big gold injection going the way of the University of Washington. And even more stats. As long as their execution is somewhat tight, I don't think there's any way the University of Washington can lose out in these fights, especially as long as they don't mess up their communication and end up with mishaps like Vivamus Mori finding himself in the backline of 4 members while his team is already disengaged. But for the moment, they're going to use that Baron Nash to bear down the mid lane inhibitor their opponents. Using that cannon minion to continue to outrange that turret, as CSU North have to play very far back. They have to respect the engage range of the University of Washington. As at least is going to stun up Marona and find some damage onto Sika, but Drago is on the charge with that sadism, and he might have gone a bit too far forward as the Charm is going to find the mid laner, and now the onslaught of Shadow is going to Fear 3. Seiko going in, and Alpha Vivamus Mori going to pick up the kill on the opposing mid laner, and Iceland going a bit too far forward. He's going to go down for it, but finally the AD carry going to be picked up on the side of the University of Washington. Looks like the fight is all but written, as Vivamus Mori gets himself a triple kill, and the ace going the way of the University of Washington at just 21 minutes in this game, and Drago 8 tanking up the turret is now, it looks like the game has concluded and the FF vote has gone up for CSU North. Only able to find 1 kill in that last fight, and University of Washington winning out in such clinical, commanding fashion in this game 1, a 21-minute victory that began at just level 1. It looks like screen. I'm not sure if the game has loaded on the broadcast, but University of Washington such a massive victory in that game 1, and set up so beautifully from the outset, knowing that Mame Jin was going to try to find that ward and pulling Seiko over to try to find that kill, and knowing that they have the level 1 power between those infected cleavers and those parleys of the gangplank, able to secure not 1 but 2 kills in the jungle. Is not only were they able to find themselves that cheeky kill, but able to set themselves up for success in the rest of that game. Drago 8 continuing to path beautifully, not only to secure those camps around the rest of the map, making sure that Mame Jin was starved of gold in that early game, but also meeting the opposing jungler where he knew he'd show up, and knowing that that would convert into a kill because of how ahead he was on that Dr. Mundo. And talked about how many scaling options the University of Washington had, but none of those even came into effect as that game closed out at such an early pace. Seiko and Drago 8, even though Dr. Mundo and Gangplank are usually thought of as these late game monsters, able to use their advantage so well. And Seiko, it wasn't even just a matter of having that early gold from picking up those 2 kills onto Mommy Jin and Carlipoo. It was also a matter of such tight play of the lane between the Gangplank and the Camille. He was always finding the parleys onto his opponent and making sure that Camille wasn't able to find the trades on her own terms with that hook shot and with that shield. Always keeping up the pressure and knowing that he had the priority to do so because of how ahead his jungler was. It stunted in that early game, and that meant that the top side was able to win out so handily. And and it looks like I'm being told by my production staff that the game has crashed. So we're gonna try to figure out those technical difficulties. As we're gonna in the meantime, I'm gonna keep breaking down how the University of Washington was able to finish off CSU North in such commanding fashion, and talked about how that top lane that top lane and jungle were able to do so well for themselves, snowballing that early game lead, but also the rest of the map winning by pure merit of just outplaying their opponents in the lane. Eigenrector and Morona, even hampered a little bit by the lethal tempo on the Seraphine, were not phased as they continue to find themselves a CS advantage down there against Isolum and Alhul too, even against 2 of the premier laners down there in the bot lane, even though Lucian a bit outranged by the Seraphine and Eigenrector, and University of Washington able to take advantage because of it. If he was able to find those trades with empowered by that Tide Caller's blessing, it might have turned things around. But the whole of University of Washington, empowered by how hard they won out in that early game, able to play with such moxie and able to generate so many advantages because of it. And not to mention Vavamis Mori in the mid lane, even though he only partially contributed to that level 1 advantage, he was able to use the power of Syndra against Carlipoo to such great effect, and not only able to counter shove those waves, but even look for those big kills. And I think a lot of what that snowballing that lead came down to is University of Washington's eye, not only for how powerful they were, especially in relation to their opponents, but their eye for where their opponents were going to be and when. And that game really ended up going out of control down there in the bot lane when CSU North, trying to mount that base defense, ended up giving over 3 kills to their opponents. A couple of them undeterred, and practically it seems like it would not be it would not even be their own fault. How could they expect to die under their own turrets? But it also comes down to how University of Washington was able to recognize how much stronger they were than their opponents and able to take advantage because of it. A lot of players talk about how they're able to find those early kills, but the games continue to drag on and give even more opportunities for their opposing team to continue to win out. But University of Washington not letting so much as anything happen, as they're able to use those early game advantages and muscle away not only kills but camps, and just keep any opportunities for gold to go in the pockets of CSU North at bay. And because of that, they were able to choke out that game in a 20-minute victory, just 1 minute after that Baron Nashor had been taken. And looks like we are going to be waiting for the teams to get into this second game. But in the meantime, you gotta wonder for CSU North, what kind of adjustments do they have to make? And even though there were a little bit of a few mishaps in that early game, especially with some early solo kills by the hands of Drago 8, like we talked about, University of Washington, it wasn't just that gold advantage that found themselves the victory. It was also everywhere else that they were able to wrestle away space from their opponents. And seemed like CSU North, apart from some 3-man ganks in the top lane, just not able to find many advantages anywhere else on the map. And it's going to have to mean that CSU North finding more aggression in this early game, more calculated aggression, I might add, as they were looking for fights, but they always turned out poorly in that game 1. And maybe CSU North tightening things up, especially as far as those loose solo kills, able to stem the early game gold advantage a bit more and play on a bit more of an even playing field. But University of Washington, regardless, coming off a big win, and we're going to have to see now whether they're going to want to close this one out in as commanding fashion as they did in game one, or if they have anything left under their sleeve that they want to try out against their opponents, knowing how much more, how much better they played, and how much more farther their execution can take them compared to CSU North. We are waiting for the lobby for the moment, and I think for CSU North, there were a couple bright spots, especially as they were able to find those kills in the top lane, and that was because of how the competition interacted with that of the University of Washington. The Hextech Ultimatum and Onslaught of Shadows so difficult for the immobile top laner in the form of Seiko on that gangplank to get away from, but unfortunately, those single kills onto the opposing top lane were all that CSU North were able to find. And meanwhile, University of Washington, knowing that CSU North had to divert so many resources just to find that 300 gold pickup onto the gangplank, were able to immediately turn on the Jets and play with such aggression everywhere else on the map. University of Washington playing so well today as they have been in the past. And as the teams begin the draft, we're going to see whether they're going to keep that up or whether CSU North is going to try to stop this lead where it stands. And we saw something similar last week where Washington State University in game one lost out in a big way. University of Washington playing so tightly, but maybe like their predecessors, maybe CSU North will be able to even things out more and give us a bit more of an even game. But regardless, from both teams, as we wait for them to get into the draft, it is going to mean that that we're looking for those adjustments from CSU North. But whether we're going to anticipate anything different from the University of Washington, whether that Hecarim or Camille, they feel like we're problematic enough, or if they just want to continue to try to take away any of those power picks, anything that can win out for CSU North just by the sheer merit of how strong the champion is. But University of Washington, like we said, it often didn't come down to the draft in that last game. It was just by how much better their players were able to play. Every single member practically at least finding something like a solo kill. You saw down there in the bot lane, Aegon in a 1v2 situation nearly killed the Lucian by himself and ended up picking up the full HP Nami, who had the free hit onto that 1 HP AD carry. And if that kind of skill difference is what's going to make the difference in this game, then maybe for CSU North, what they need is try to mix things up in the draft department. Maybe try to find some picks that University of Washington aren't used to responding to, and hopefully they have something like that under their sleeve. But it's going to not only take that, but also going to take even tighter execution all around the map, especially in those early games, because we know how deadly University of Washington are when it comes to snowballing those leads away. And once again, CSU North find themselves 0-1 in this best of 3 series. We are going to continue to be waiting for the pick and ban to come through for these two teams. But yeah, and finally the draft is going to come through, it looks like, for these two teams. In just a moment, as we wait for the first ban from CSU North, who are now going to find themselves on the blue side. Maybe some different draft strategies are what it takes for them to win out in this game too, and stop University of Washington from taking this game away in a 2-0. So now the bans. Looks like it's going to be the Rel once again on the side of CSU North. Morona absolutely have to respect the power of that player on those engaged supports, and Kai's going to be responded in turn. Once again, it looks like University of Washington just going to settle for taking away those power picks from CSU North. With the Thresh again, respect ban to Morona, how devastating he can be on those two champions. And we saw that last week as it's going to be the Samira to follow up for the University of Washington. keeping in turn. It looks like if they're spotting any opportunity for CSU North to try to win out in this game, it's going to be in the bot lane. And because of that, 2 of those key AD carry picks going to be taken away from CSU North. It's now for the 3rd ban of CSU North. I imagine it's going to be something like the Skarner, but as you can imagine, if you take away the Skarner, you give up the Dr. Mundo, and it seemed like CSU North hardly had any answer to that pick. So now it is going to be the Dr. Mundo, in fact, which opens up an interesting opportunity. Dragawade on his signature pick in the form of the Skarner is going to be available to him, and CSU North had to make these concessions, had to respect something. It looks like Morona took the priority away from Dragawade, and CSU North just gonna have to figure out something to do against this Skarner, as they are prepared for it. It is coming. I think we all know it as Udyr. Going to mean that University of Washington going for similar bans in respect to game 1, as CSU North taking their time with that first pick, and it looks like it's going to be the Seraphine, actually. Once again, brilliant blue side first pick if you can use it to its fullest effect in all those lanes. But regardless, even if you just want to take it to that bot lane or support, it is going to mean taking away that key pick from Morona that he brought out in game 1 after that Rel and Thresh were banned away from him. As now University of Washington going to respond with the Senna, actually. Pretty interesting here, taking away picking up the bot laner immediately. Looks like they want to open themselves up a bit more opportunities as far as the top side goes, as they know that's where they make their money and where they really find those early game advantages. Going to pick up the safe laner, and with scaling options in the form of the Senna, and knowing that they're against something like the Seraphine, which doesn't have so much kill power in the bot lane, they're going to have the opportunity to take that one away. Now the Skarner going to be picked up. There it is for Dragawade. That signature pick that Washington State University last week looked powerless against, and CSU North weren't able to respond in a similar playstyle against the Dr. Mundo, and we'll see how much better they're able to do against the Skarner. As now another pretty unorthodox bot lane pick is going to be the Jinx, picked up for CSU North. It's not the most commonly picked bot laner, but it's not so terrible, as it does find itself largely outclassed by things like the Aphelios, but maybe this is that unorthodox pick that CSU North need in their belts. But here's a less unorthodox pick in the form of the Olaf, one of the premier early game junglers, and maybe that's what CSU North need. Hecarim, while he is able to farm and scale, he doesn't have as much power to match Dragawade, and the Olaf is going to be able to provide that straight up power to run at their opponents, and maybe that's what they're going to need to shut down the Skarner, prevent him from really running away with the game. But I think regardless of whether he shut down the Skarner, he's still going to buy his Turbo Chem Tank. He's still going to have his ultimate. He's still going to run straight at your AD carries. And speaking of AD carries, it is going to be the Misfortune locked in for the University of Washington. Now, this is a pretty interesting dynamic. Either the Senna or the Misfortune could be played in either the AD carry or the support role. And it's going to be up to the University of Washington, I can imagine, just to the potential of their players, where they want to send those 2 picks. As now on to the second ban phase, it looks like it is going to be the Gangplank taken away for CSU North. Just making sure that Seiko isn't able to keep absolutely decimating Cherophobia with those parleys. And on the other hand, there's Renekton taken away from Cherophobia. It's not the Camille, which means they're going to be conceding the Hextech ultimatum. They don't fear it. Rather, what they fear is any kind of straight up early game monster in the form of that Renekton. And now the victor going to be taken away for the from CSU as well. As to finish off this draft, it looks like it's going to be the Warwick picked up for CSU North in this blue side. Very interesting top lane pick here, and really something that we are not at all used to seeing, whether it's going to be in the top lane or the jungle. That's a pretty interesting dynamic in its own right, as either the Olaf or the Warwick can be played in either top lane or the jungle. And now University of Washington with the first phase of this red side, waiting what I imagine is going to be the top lane pick, unless the mid lane wants to be the more blind. And speaking of unorthodox top lane picks, it is going to be the Riven for University of Washington. Now, this is a matchup that I don't expect you're going to be seeing in any avenue of competitive play, the Riven versus either the Warwick or the Olaf. And I don't know if this is University of Washington just wanting to flex their stuff up, knowing that they are 1-0 in this series, but it is going to make for a fun top lane match, even more fun than seeing Seiko parley his opponent off cooldown. There it is, the Warwick for CSU North. Him and the Jinx going to be that Zon duo, and going to mean that CSU North having something under their belt that University of Washington isn't too used to seeing, unless they know something that I don't. Now for the last pick of this mid lane, it is going to be CSU North with the Twisted Fate. Even if they can't win out in the mid lane against the likes of the University of Washington, they're still going to be looking for those global map opportunities with that Destiny Gate. And for the last pick of the University of Washington, it's going to be for the mid lane, unless it's going to be the Riven in the top. It's going to be the Silas. Either the Riven or the Silas can be flexed in either of the solo lanes here, just like the Misfortune and the Senna can. And we've got a lot of interesting stuff going on in this draft. CSU North remains to be seen where this Warwick is going to be sent, whether he's going to be flexed with the Olaf or if he's just going to be matching University of Washington with what I think is one of the most powerful dueling top laners, even if it isn't so often seen in competitive play. This is what I think that CSU North, this is the direction I think they want to take. Something that University of Washington isn't so used to taking, because if they take them head on in those meta matchups, I think University of Washington is just going to win out by sheer merit of their skill and their experience. But if you bring out something like the Warwick that maybe Seiko isn't so used to seeing, then maybe he's not going to be able to respect those all-in windows from his opponent. Maybe he's not going to find himself advantageous trades, and maybe that's going to convert into that early game lead that CSU North need on their side if they don't want University of Washington to absolutely run away with the game like they did in game 1. Regardless, Silas, I think, is a great counterpick to the Twisted Fate in the mid lane, and that's why I think we'll be seeing him there, as he's able to use that hijack to steal away the Destiny Gate and follow the Twisted Fate wherever he finds himself, unless CSU North are able to get themselves with the Twisted Fate onto the map without University of Washington being able to react in time. And those are those key windows that I think CSU North are going to be looking out for if they want to be the ones with the priority in the early game. As now we are headed into the load screen. It's going to be Mame Jin on the Olaf in this early game to match that of Skarner from Drago 8. That signature pick of his that has been used so well throughout Drago 8's time on this starting roster. Maybe the Olaf is what it takes. Gonna pick himself up the Chilling Smite. It looks like this is pretty interesting. He could have opted for the Red Smite and try to meet Drago 8 in those early game duels and use the sheer power of the Olaf to win out against him, but it looks like instead he's going to be opting for the Chilling Smite and try to use his early ganks to their fullest potential. Use that slow so we make sure that those axes land and secure some kills for his team. As once again, both teams, it looks like, with a pretty orthodox setup. Apart from Karlapu in the mid lane, going to be making his way up to this top side brush. Maybe looking for another early game level 1 play here against their opponents. But I think, CSU North. Maybe looking to match that early gameplay, similar to that of University of Washington. But Drago 8 not going to make the same mistake as the opposing jungler did in game 1, I suppose, as he's just going to hover around his Raptors, make sure that Olaf isn't going too far forward. And if he does, he's going to have ample space to walk away from that one before any of those undertows can land and secure those chained slows. On the other hand, Aegon Rector and Verona, it's going to be the Senna on the support this game, and Misfortune as the AD carry, and a lot of early game power in this bot lane for the University of Washington, especially against the likes of the Jinx, who really wants to hit those item spikes to come online. But come online she absolutely does, especially once she gets that Runan's Hurricane along with something like the Kraken Slayer. But in the meantime, Verona going to be using the range of the Senna, and Aegon Rector following up with those double ups to try to make sure that Iceland has just as hard a time he did in game 1 CSing against his opponents. Both junglers opting for the blue side star, which is going to mean they are going to end up on sides of the map, unless anything Divergent goes on, and Vamamis Mori finding trades against the Twisted Fate on this Silas, but it's going to be very difficult knowing that his opponent has the Electrocute available to him. Vamamis Mori just going to use those heals with that Fleet Footwork and the Corrupting Potion, but now he hits the level 2, but matches out of Carlipoo's, and looks like Seiko trading out handily against Cherophobia, even as he's able to find those Grasp of the Undying empowered bites against the Riven. He has those broken wings, and now that he has the Valor as well, he's going to be able to shield away the trades from his opponent, but Cherophobia has a lot more power, I think, in these early game 1v1s because he does have the barrier available to him, and he knows that he's able to land the fear onto Seiko. Such a powerful ability when it comes to that 1v1 as he's able to provide not only damage reduction, but an area of effect fear as well. And Cherophobia, he's trading into those Valor shields, but it looks like it doesn't matter to him. He just wants to find the Grasp of the Undying whenever he can. And try to zone Seiko off the wave as best as he can. Both top laners hitting the level 3 at the same time, but down here in the bot lane, even though the root lands onto Morona and Iceland on a couple rockets here and there, they're able to shove the wave in as soon as possible against their opponents, but that might spell doom for them as the Olaf is waiting in the wings, and it looks like Aegon Rector and Morona know it and are able to from that gank before it happens, but the top lane is looking especially volatile, even in comparison to this bot lane where Aegon Rector has found himself 5 CS up over his opponent. Drago8, knowing how aggressively Cherophobia is trading into Seiko, tries to find himself an early kill onto the Warwick, but instead is just going to settle for the Scuttle Crab. But it looks like Cherophobia is not moving away quite just yet. He has to respect his timing, and it looks like he didn't quite just yet as he has the fear. He's going to use it to try to send the Skarner away, and he's able to use the flash, but the stun's able to land from Drago8. He had that poison landed onto the Warwick, and the stun going to land on, but a huge bite under the turret! Seiko going down against the Warwick under his own turret. It looks like Drago8 walked away from that kill a bit too early. That looks like all but secured for the top lane of University of Washington, with Drago8 having gone in with that flash stun, and it looks like he walked away a bit too early, didn't tank for his top laner. It's going to cost them dearly as Cherophobia. That is what we are talking about. That is what University of Washington are not used to seeing, a single ability turning the tides in that 1v2 situation and getting that heal and that kill under the turret where Seiko looked like he had himself the kill secured, and that's going to be big for CSU North, but are they going to be able to find even more with it, as even with that first blood, Cherophobia still finds himself about 15 CS under his opponent, who now has the Executioner's Calling. This is the pickup you want against something like a Warwick top who was so reliant on the Grasp of the Undying and with that bite of his to win out in these trades. It's a really intelligent purchase, but Cherophobia instead going to pick up the Sheen for himself and has the Doran's Blade as well. It's going to mean he's got himself a lot more early game power. And speaking of early game power, one of the weaker laners in the mid lane, and that's going to mean he's even going to get bullied by the likes of the Twisted Fate, especially when he's rocking around the Corrupting Potion with that Electrocute, excuse me. And that's going to force out the teleport from Vamamis Mori, lest he lose out even more in this mid lane. But regardless, looks like Carlipoo going to send out one last wave before he backs. And unfortunately, this isn't quite the timing where Carlipoo is able to get that 6, make it back to base, and send out a teleport to the bot lane. But still winning out a little bit as Mama Jin now looking for Mori in the river. He's able to proc that full Conqueror and gets a few Undertow stacks as well, and even finds Drago8 with that last Undertow, as the root is going to land onto Iceland. But now the root is going to land onto the Senna as well from those Flame Chompers, and Morona's forced to flash away, and Mama Jane on the charge is now Drago8 going to get exhausted by Alhu 2, is doing a great job of zoning away the Silas and the Skarner. CSU North fighting back handily in this game 2 against the University of Washington, not letting them find those early kills that had really let them run away with the game as they had in game 1. And because of that, they're able to pick up the Ocean Dragon, which is going to continue to bolster that early game power of CSU North, get themselves some regeneration. But now the root is going to land onto Mortel. He was able to hide away from that one thanks to the flash and barrier being expended in that earlier river fight. And because of that, he's going to go down in a solo kill thanks to Iceland and Alhu 2. A brilliant root from there, as now a 3v1 situation in the top lane. Vamamis Mori's made his way up over there. So Iceland looking for a trade against the Misfortune under his own turret, but he's going to get finished off by one last turret shot, even after expending his heal. Didn't use the flash in time, and because of that, Aegon Rector is able to trade away the solo kill in the bot lane in a 1v2 situation, and even pick himself up a Summoner spell in return. Cherophobia, though, in the top lane didn't go down, even in the face of the Vomit Lord making his way up to the top lane as well. But now that the Vomit has that Hextech alternator available to him, he's got quite a bit more power to fight out against the Silas, or against the Twisted Fate, excuse me, on that Silas. Especially if he's able to find that Kingslayer heal. Now Carlapu's on the back foot as Vomit more, maybe threatening a solo kill here in the mid lane, even with the fleet footwork. Look how the tides have turned down here in the bot lane, where it looked like CSU North had done so well picking themselves up that kill onto Morona, that key mastermind of University of Washington's game plan. Now they're able to shove away in the bot lane, as well as Akenmark are able to stick around, even in the face of that wave being crashed into him. And because of that, I think it's a net positive for the University of Washington now they're in the bot lane when it comes to gold and experience. But CSU North going to shake it off, as it looks like maybe a disconnect from the top laner of CSU North. We are going to hold this off for a pause as we wait for Cherophobia to come back into this game, but it's going to be quite a game without him. On this Warwick against the Riven, and we'll let you know how this develops going forward, but regardless, try to take an inventory of what's gone on in just these 7 minutes. Before in game 1, at just 9 minutes into this game, University of Washington had cemented themselves a 5,000 gold lead, absolutely unprecedented in competitive play. And now 7 minutes into this game, the gold lead is dead even. And if that mishap hadn't happened down there in the ball lane, I imagine CSU North would have pulled ahead. But speaking of mishaps, of course, this all came to fruition because Cherophobia was able to find that outplay against the gank of Drago 8 and Seiko, and University of Washington maybe finding themselves with a little bit too much hubris. It's going to cost them a gold not a gold disadvantage, a kill disadvantage, excuse me, but no gold disadvantage quite just yet. Still anyone's game, but I think where it's really going to start to heat up is when Carlapu on this Twisted Fate decides to bring out that Destiny Gate and look for these plays in the side lanes. I think he has a lot of setup for it between the Charm and the Root of Alhu 2 and the suppression of Cherophobia. If he's able to land, it's all a matter of finding the opportunity where he can be on the map with that Destiny Gate without Vivamus Mori at his heels, able to steal away that ultimate from his opponent and use that Destiny Gate to follow it, or the stolen Destiny Gate to follow him, but thanks to that hijack. It looks like Cherophobia PC crash. We are just going to wait for him to get back into this game. But regardless, I think CSU North has done a much better job this game around of keeping pace with the University of Washington. It really showed in that river fight as CSU North was posturing for that early dragon. Alhu 2 able to zone away the likes of the Skarner and Vivamus Mori, taking advantage of the windows that they have against the University of Washington, where Drago 8, he hasn't quite yet become that unstoppable tank monster who's going to run straight at your backline with that ultimate and suppress your main carry. Vivamus Mori as well, still, even with that Hextech alternator, he's still just a Silas, and because of that, he's still melee champion with only a short range dash unless able to find that abduct. And CSU North, knowing that they have that window, able to use their that slight opportunity that they have to wrestle away that dragon, and it really came down to Alhu 2 keeping Drago and Vivamus Mori at bay as they were looking for the rotation from the mid lane and buying the opportunity for the root from Iceland with those Flame Chompers onto Morona. He was able to find both summoners of the support of the University of Washington. Even if it didn't net a kill right then, it did find one as the root was landed onto the Senna of the University of Washington down there in the bot lane. Fortunately, didn't quite calculate the dive so well, but of course, it's going to be evened out, I imagine, thanks to University of Washington having played that dive in the top lane a bit too aggressively. Drago 8 not tanking as much as he could for his top laner, and because of that, CSU North, even if they aren't ahead in this early game, they are at least able to find themselves even, and I think that is that enough is what we need to look for CSU North if they want to try to even out this series against their opponents. Like we said, it's not enough to just be even. They're going to need to start to really find opportunities in this early game, and Come down to Karlapu's Destiny Gate, but as well to some action from Mame Jin on this Olaf. Continue to wait for Cherophobia's arrival, but Mame Jin, right now he finds himself about 2 camps behind Drago8 on the Skarner, and neither of them have made too much happen with their ganks. Drago8 almost finding a kill in the top lane, and Mame Jin trying to find something in the bot lane, but some intelligent, respected timing from Eigenrector and Morona meant that amounted to nothing. But of course, Mame Jin did find himself that early Ocean Dragon that has to be accounted for when you're playing the Olaf. Those dragons have to be picked up just by merit of how strong your champion is in the early game. Drago8, no stranger to this kind of matchup, and was able to find himself a couple camps in the meantime. But of course, when you're playing a champion like the Olaf, who has so much of his kit's power concentrated in this early game, you have to try to make something happen in these early lane states. You have to try to generate some kind of advantages either for yourself or for your laners, lest you begin to fall behind in usefulness. Drago8, on the other hand, even if he's not making anything happen yet so far, where he did almost find that kill in the top lane, no matter how neutral his scoreline stays, he's going to continue to maintain his role, right? He's going to continue to buy that turbo chem tank. He's going to continue to apply those stuns. He's going to continue to apply that suppression to Karlapu and to isolate him in these late game team fights. On the other hand, Mame Jin doesn't offer so much utility apart from the undertow, and because of that, it's just a matter of applying damage and keeping himself alive in those fights thanks to his empowered healing and the gore drinker. But if he continues to fall behind in respect to the opposing jungler, then his usefulness is only going to taper off. It's going to mean that it's going to call on the rest of the team to have to pick up the slack, and there is opportunities for it, as Isolim and Alhu too playing some two of the premier scaling picks in the bot lane. Jinx, even if she finds herself a little bit outclassed by some of the other AD carries that are available down there, she is still an absolute late game hyper carry once she gets that Runaan's Hurricane, is able to apply those rockets at such high range and such high attack speed to the entire enemy team. And even if Mame Jin isn't able to do the damage, do the healing that he wants to, he's still going to be an important frontliner for University of Washington to have to get through if they want to stop Isolim from being that late game hyper carry. And it looks like CSU North have drafted this kind of composition where they're going to be peeling for the Jinx in this late game. And with that in mind, it is going to come down to whether Isolim is going to continue to snowball down here in the bot lane, having picked up 1 kill. And even though he did die due to that misplayed bot lane dive, he still has himself a kill, and that's more than he can speak for than he did in game 1. Down about 10 CS against his opponent here, but he's going to continue to scale past the usefulness of the Misfortune. Eigenrector, on the other hand, on this Misfortune, going to be looking for those mid-game spikes, with the power of his champion. As we're finally going to be headed back into this game, Cherophobia joining us back from the dead. His PC finally having been rebooted, I can imagine. And now he's going to get himself back into shape for this slow push, and going to continue to use his gold advantage here to try to zone away Seiko. And zones his opponent away from that cannon minion, it looks like, and with that Executioner's Calling, it's going to mean that Seiko's mythic item, going to be delayed for just a little bit further. On the other hand, Cherophobia, with the Sheen and the Kindle Gem picked up for himself, he's going to find himself towards that Divine Sunderer on a much faster pace, and even has the Doran's Blade to his name to secure this early game power, but it hasn't quite come to fruition yet, as Seiko still finds himself with the gold advantage, or with the CS advantage in the top lane, as Vavamis Mori clearing out some topside vision, as it looks like CSU North are going to make their way into the Rift Herald. Drago8, on the other hand, going to look for something in the bot lane. It's looking red buff. This is what I think looks really great jungling looks like, even if just by merit of how much stronger the Olaf is than the Skarner at this stage in the game. He's always trying to look for another play on the other side of the map, and it looks like the play is going to be fresh and onto Isolim, even past his second tier turret. Drago8 foregoing the red buff and is able to find a great dive onto the opposing AD carry and shutting down that key member of CSU North's composition, and catching him at an awkward moment where Alhu too had been on the recall timing, and that's going to mean that University of Washington continuing to win out extremely hard down here in the bot lane, having picked up 3 platings against their opponents. It's now Mame Jin trying to find the red buff to trade out that plate in near the bot lane. Now that Ragnarok is going to be popped, and Vamos Mori doesn't have too much mana left, but it looks like Flash is going to be matched by that of Vamos Mori, and the under 2 not able to go through. Vamos Mori going down very low, and not Mame Jin as well, but Olaf only gets stronger as he's lower, and now, hold on a second, here's that Super Mega Death Rocket. There it is! That's that kind of usefulness from the Jinx that I think University of Washington not so used to playing around, and not expecting that ultimate from the Jinx, because that's that kind of pick that I can imagine University of Washington not so used to seeing, and because of that, Iceland able to find himself a kill even after getting dived down there in the bot lane, and even though he finds himself 26 CS down here in the bot lane, Drago8 now joining the mid lane is able to find the Chilling Smite onto Mame Jin, and doesn't have and now the stun is going to land onto him. There is no escape for the Olaf from the Skarner. Now Drago8 is looking trying to keep up the knowing that Twisted Fate has no mana left, but he's garnered a bit too much movement speed with those Mercurius treads, and Drago8 going to respect that and just going to go to the base with a kill and assess to his name and a CS advantage as well. Mame Jin staying a bit too long in the mid lane and not respecting that Drago8 had stuck around in his own bot lane as well, is going to lose out his red buff without having traded one away for his own, but fortunately is able to find some platings. As now, here's the Senna, and now Vamos Mori with the teleport as well. He's able to find the charm, but not going to land it on anybody quite just yet. He used from Alhu 2 to dodge out from that abduct. But the charm going to whiff as well. That's 2 Miss Seraphine ultimates in one fight, as now the teleport from the Twisted Fate is finally coming through with that Destiny Gate. The stun going to land onto Aegon Rector, but he's able to get away from that one with the Gale Force, and now Drago8 joins the battle with that Turbo Kentang. Mame Jin is here as well. It's a 4v4, but now a 4v5. In favor of the University of Washington. Seagull joining from the flank, and now the Unstoppable is here with the Ragnarok from Mame Jin. He's able to use that one last Undertow to try to trade out a kill against the University of Washington. 1-for-1 looks like down here in the bot lane. Seiko going a bit too far forward with that dive and fighting it a bit too long against the Olaf, whose Ragnarok came out just in time. But it looks like University of Washington not upset about that 1-for-1, as they are going to find the opportunity to start up this dragon immediately and pick themselves up this Cloud Dragon, knowing that Mame Jin has neither the flash, but it looks like there it is again, the Super Mega Death Rocket from Isolim. The Jinx showing up in hugely in spades this game, as even though he's handed over a couple kills that he had hardly able to play against, Super Mega Death Rocket not only able to find a kill, but also a steal onto the Cloud Dragon as well, and that is so huge for CSU North, as now they find themselves 2 dragons to 0 against their opponents. That is going to mean not only a lot of breathing room for CSU North, but now the slow is going to come down to Isolim, as he sends down the Flame Trump, is able to lock up the Senna, but he's going to get locked out himself, as well as the Curse of the Black Mist going to find him, and that's going to be a 3rd kill going the way of Aegon Rector. Once again, the support and the jungler nowhere to be seen, and really well played from University of Washington, baiting Isolim into thinking that they had gone back to base, but sticking around in that base and using the crowd control between the two of them to find the kill onto the opposing AD carry. Iceland plays with that Super Mega Death Rocket beat, has handed over 4 kills to the University of Washington. They are really targeting this key hyper carry member of CSU North, but even if he's the one handing over those kills, he's also the one keeping them in this game practically. Like I was saying, because they find themselves at 2 kills to 0 over their opponents, it's going to mean that University of Washington has to play a bit more careful going into this mid game, knowing that an Ocean Soul, it looks like it's going to be the Mountain Soul, I imagine. So now the kill is going to go on to Drago8, I think, is finally Cherophobia going to go down. He has the healing from his Q and with his Divine Sunderer, but it's not enough in the face of that suppression, as Drago8 continuing to show up on his signature pick at 2-0-2 scoreline at just 13 minutes into this game. Always able to find those opportunities and almost finding not only a top kill but a dragon, but thwarted by the efforts of CSU North. As now Morona on the roam is able to land the Curse of the Black Mist onto Kartapu. Vamos Mori not with the Sound Abduct to finish off that kill, and it's just going to find himself a bit more space for his mid laner, who's down 4 platings. You can see University of Washington, the kills are pretty even, but now Vamos Mori going to go in that stolen Destiny Gate, able to lock up the kill onto the Jinx once again, and Alhu too forced to watch and walk away, and maybe not even do that, as the slow is going to land from the Senna, and the Gale Force going to secure the 2nd kill onto the bot lane of CSU North, and suddenly where CSU North were able to find an advantage here and there just by University of Washington just not knowing what the potential of this team composition was. Now the early game is continuing to snowball out of control, just like it had been in game one. Karlapu and Mame Jin are going to try to find at least a Scuttle Crab to make up for the play down there in the ball lane. It's like it's all they're going to get, as well as the mid lane turret having dropped over there. And Karlapu, I think this is pretty interesting. He's opting for the Leandri's Anguish. Ordinarily, you see Twisted Fates opt for that Hex Tech Rocket Belt to secure that movement seed, make sure that stun lands. Speaking of stuns landing, here's a suppression onto the Twisted Fate into the Absond Abduct from Vivamus Mori, and not even a chance for the Twisted Fate to react to that. Has a splash available, no chance for him, as the kill going to go the way of the University of Washington once again. Drago 8 making it happen on this Skarner. Vivamus Mori now suddenly, even with that mid lane turret having gone down, here's a solo kill in the top lane that might be thwarted by the ultimate from Cherophobia, and Seiko gonna get feared here, but Morona joined the battle just in time to secure that healing onto his top laner, making sure that that solo kill doesn't go awry like it had been in that early gank. And University of Washington completely tightening up all around the map. They're not going to let any sort of mishaps happen anywhere else. No Super Mega Death Rockets, no Dragon Steals, and no outplayed dives. University of Washington are turning on the Jets, and they are turning on this top lane turret and finishing it off very quickly. Every single member of University of Washington, just like they had been in game one, really turning around with these gold advantages, but of course, you have to remember that when it comes to those neutral objectives, CSU North have found themselves 2-0 against the University of Washington, and that's really going to need to be where they decide the game. If they can secure the Mountain Soul, that permanent buff in the form of those enhanced resistances as well as those shields, then maybe that's what it takes to win out against the sheer superior play of the University of Washington. But they've got something under their belt as their own, is now they've started to land on Mame Jin. Couple points of damage as Mame Jin pops that honey fruit to get that healing back up to himself. Both teams posturing for this third dragon. I think this is really where the game is going to be decided, whether CSU North are able to secure this third dragon for themselves, continuing to get those permanent advantages and set themselves up for a Dragon Soul, or if University of Washington are going to try to stop them. Now Cherophobia, having whipped the Infinite Durus, is going to completely botch this engage for himself, but University of Washington trying to be on the back foot, but a huge wind slash from the Ribbon is going to find a double kill onto the two key frontliners of CSU North, and now the rest of the University of Washington is now only Alhu 2 is left on this map. Things that suddenly completely turned around in the favor of the University of Washington thanks to that missed Infinite Durus. And now Alhu2 forced to flash away from the rest of the University of Washington, but they want blood. They're going in under this bot lane turret. Almost more tanking for his top laner. And now the Valor goes in for Seiko, and that last whip from the Gore Drinker is going to mean ace for University of Washington. Look at the bounties aboard every single member of the University of Washington, rocking a big golden advantage over their opponents, and now they've completely turned the tides. If ever they needed to be turned, Mountain Dragon going their way, and where CSU North thought they had themselves the engage. Warwick missing the mark with that suppression, and the University of Washington kiting back beautifully and setting themselves up for success with those layered AoE ultimates. The Dawning Shadow, as well as the Bullet Time and the Wind Slash, everything coming together for the University of Washington in that last fight. Absolutely setting CSU North into their trap, funneling them into all those AoE all the way, as Seiko immediately killing out the front line of CSU North with that Wind Slash, and because of that. Now, suddenly, CSU North, not only have they lost themselves that soul point win condition, they now find themselves 11,000 gold below their opponents. Or 11 kills below their opponents, and 8,000 gold below their opponents at just 19 minutes into this game. Once again, take a look at this. It's an absolute beauty to behold. Every single member of the University of Washington walking a bounty, and even if it's a big flex for the University of Washington, maybe it does present an opportunity for CSU North to try to find their way back into this game, as it does mean any kill that they can muster anywhere on this map is going to get themselves a little bit more value If only they could find it. But that's going to be a very tall task, because as I think every single member of the University of Washington, it has some kind of slippery mechanic to their kit. Drago8 has the Thornmail completed with that Turbo Chem tank. He is so tanky at just 19 minutes into this game. And on the other hand, Seiko has so many dashes to try to get away from anyone who tries to lock him down. Rhombus Mori as well has that heal from the Kingslayer. Drop play anything that goes on to him as Cherophobia, maybe looking for the trade onto Seiko here, but Morona and Negan Rector have joined the battle, and he knows that he's forced to use that Infinite Durus to walk away from that fight. Meanwhile, it's all that CSU North can do just to try to clear out vision in their own jungle as they spot off of Rhombus Mori, but here once again, University of Washington going for that immediately spawned Baron Nashor, as now Karlapu and Mame Jin for this play. They take away the bomb plant and force out the flash from Vavamis Mori. And look at that, where the rest of the University of Washington have diverted their resources to this Baron Nashor take. Not even two members of CSU North can find the kill onto Vavamis Mori. It's absolutely devastating game state for them, as now with this Baron Nashor having been taken, that's a 9,000 gold lead. Now maybe a kill going on to support of CSU. Alhutu trying to delay it for just a little bit as he uses that charm onto the opposing support, but it's all for nothing as Mame Jin not even able to finish off his own Raptors. As University of Washington not even going to back after picking up that Baron Nashor buff. They're straight down the bot lane, or straight down the mid lane, excuse me, knowing that there was nothing that CSU can do to stop them. Even with just this little bit of wave, that's all that they need with this double marksman composition. Senna with so much rage bearing down the mid lane. Mame Jin, even though he's able to find the undertow, the engage is getting turned around onto him with the fear forced to disengage. But Seiko going right back in onto the 0 mana AD carry of CSU North, and now the bullet time going down as well and catching every. The shutdown goes away onto the river last, but what cost is the Roots are going to go down onto two members of CSU North, and an unstoppable Ragnarok and Powered Salad is going to dive straight into the double turrets of CSU North and dragging Karlapu from the clutches of the safety of his base, and four members of the University of Washington left standing in the face of CSU North. The University of Washington showing up in a big way, not only in game but in game two, and while the early game might not have been as explosive as in this game, they are continuing to show that they have superior skills, they have superior map rotations, and they have superior League of Legends play. And CSU North 16 kills down and 12,000 gold below their opponents at 22 minutes into this game are looking all but lost in this game, as University of Washington keeping up the tempo as much as they possibly can. They're running straight into the jungle of their opponents, stemming the gold wherever they can, heading straight to the Mountain Dragon off this recall, making sure that there's absolutely no avenue for CSU North to try to get back into this game. And look at this, Morona running straight at the mid laner, running straight at this gold card at the root, going to land onto him, and Morona with the barrier going to face of three members. He's able to walk straight away, but not away from the super, as the root almost lands onto Seiko, and fortunately for CSU North, they're able to pick up their 6th kill of the game onto Morona, flexing his stuff down there in the bot lane, having picked up the Kraken Slayer, as well as that Umbral Glaive. Unfortunately, a pity kill practically going their way, but that's not going to stop the University of Washington from bearing down this bot lane turret. Still have the Baron Nashor buff empowering their minions, and that still means that University or CSU are in so much trouble down here. Seiko looked for the play onto the engage, and he's forced to use that Broken Wings, but he's gonna get locked up by the charm, and finally another kill, maybe going well the way. Isolate the top lane, but cost of the bullet time finding the two members of the CSU bot lane, and now Cherophobia going to get locked up as well, forcing that Infinite Durst to run away once again. Drago8 not even participating, not even necessary, as CSU North so desperate to find anything in these fights, walks straight into the clutches of Aegon Rector's bullet time, as Drago8 tanking up the turret dutifully for them to be finished off by Aegon Rector's suppression, going to land onto the mid laner as well. Cherophobia, the only one left, CSU North in this game, is finally the double kill going to go the way. And absolutely a massive 2-0 victory going to go the way of University of Washington. Both games not even going so far as 25 minutes. Game 1 going out in less than 22, and Game 2 going out in less than 24. University of Washington with an absolute masterclass. Whether it comes to snowballing an early game lead or turning an even early game into their favor and never letting it go. University of Washington showing up so beautifully in tonight's match against CSU North. And CSU North, they had themselves a few bright moments, and I really liked how they made those adjustments in game 2, bringing out something like the Warwick and like the Jinx, something that University of Washington, they don't know the windows of, they don't know the power of, and because of that, they were able to find themselves a couple kills here and there between the Super Mega Death Rock and the Dragon Steel as well, turning around a top lane dive, and because of that, I think they were able to win, or they were able to stand their ground a bit in the early game, but University of Washington just showing up so much more strongly with so much tighter execution, such great team play all across the board from the University of Washington, and showing why they are walking away from the past 2 weeks with 2-0 victories. 3 of those games in less than 25 minutes, and with the University of Washington having finished off that last game with a 13,000 gold lead and insurmountable kill advantages all across the board. That is going to do it for tonight's best of 3 match between University of Washington and CSU North. Thank you for joining us tonight. If you want to see more matches like these, and if you want to keep up with the University of Washington in League of Legends, as well as all its other esports, be sure to follow us here on Twitch at U of Wa Esports, as well as on Twitter, to keep up with updates whenever we go live. But that is going to be us signing off for tonight, and University of Washington walking away from today with a huge victory that they can absolutely pat themselves on the back for. These are games that you want to be studying if you want to get better at the game of League of Legends. But that is going to do it for us here tonight on this broadcast. I've been Kestra, and I've been your caster tonight.